Hi, everyone, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Influence series, where we are talking to CEOs and business leaders all about the power of influence. And this is off the back of my book, of course, Secrets of Influence, which you can now get on Amazon. And with us in the hot seat today is none other than David Satterwhite. He is the CEO of a cool company, which we're going to get into in a moment, called Cronis. David, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here.
It's all great to have you here, but I'm super pumped to get into the whole Cronis story. So let's do that now. Give us the elevator pitch. What are you guys doing there at Cronis?
Yeah. What we fundamentally at Cronis believe is that organizations can't reach their full potential if their people don't. Ultimately, organizations are about people, and if they're not reaching their full potential, then companies can't. So, when you think about the goals and targets and milestones and everything that companies are trying to achieve, it's hard to do when you can't even take a look at a Harvard Business Review article without seeing that 75% of employees say they're disengaged.
Hmm.
They're not engaged. They're burned out. They're not productive. They're feeling all these different things. And when they double click into it, one of the biggest things they say is there's no career development. I don't feel like the company cares about me. And one of the number one ways you tackle all of this, and certainly my experience in my career, is mentorship. And the thing about mentorship is that if you allow it to be just a spontaneous thing that you just tell us sort of just happens, it's generally only a very small subset of people who get mentored. And that ends up being a very sliver of your company, and you don't get the full potential. If you have a company or an organization that's 100 people, you can have one person in HR running around with a spreadsheet, making sure that good mentorship, connecting mentors with mentees and whatnot. But you get to the point where 100, 500 employees, 1,000 employees, where it just doesn't scale. It's not, and let alone is it inclusive. Right? It's something to do it effectively. You really need to have an effective software platform that helps you, do that process in a scalable, effective, equitable way. So that's what we do.
Amazing, man. It's right at the wheelhouse of influence for me because it's all about elevating people. That's really what influence is. And
Exactly.
so it's super interesting to hear what you're doing. And I love this idea of mentoring people because like especially when your company's not really at scale, it's kind of like an afterthought. It's you're working for a
Yes.
paycheck and a vision. But getting, as you said, getting the most out of people, getting them to their full potential it's a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah.
So how does it all work then? Are you mentoring? Is someone internally within the business mentoring you? So like you might have a CFO mentoring a finance manager. Is that kind of how it works, or is the idea of mentorship external as well to your clients?
It can be external to customer. I think the main focus is internal, but we have customers doing a lot of amazing things, running programs that actually stretch outside the company for sure. And attach mentors there. I would say the majority of customers are using it to attach mentors, not just within functions. So that in your example, that CFO might be connected with someone over in engineering, because part of the power of mentorship is having what we call two-way mentorship or reverse mentorship happen as well. So that CFO starts learning about what it's like to be an engineer in the company. That engineer who's maybe more junior in the official sort of mentee part of the relationship learns a ton about their career and how to build their career over time from the CFO. CFO gets visibility and understanding in terms of what's going on in engineering. I'm always fascinated, Matt, that people who run companies think that they know what's going on just by looking at spreadsheets. It's fascinating to me. They think that if they look at data, which is super important, of course, but if they look at the data, it gives them a full picture of what's going on. I've never believed that. I think you have to be in touch with people at all levels of the organization. So part of the amazing benefits of mentorship is that it's two-way. You have mentors who are helping mentees develop their careers and get, as we talked about, to be more engaged, get developed, hopefully on the path to do the best work of their lives, which is ultimately, I think, the number one goal of a leader, is to put people in position to do that. But at the same time, they're getting visibility. And in my opinion, they're becoming better leaders because of what they're learning about that job. Not only is it different types of roles and functions, and it's also backgrounds. So companies are trying to set up, and some of the most meaningful mentor relationships I've had have been with people who have a completely different background than me. That person of a different ethnicity and a different gender and a different preference that lives in a different area is someone that I can learn a ton from, and hopefully I'm in a position to help them with their career because I've been doing it for a long time. So that's part of my goal in terms of helping that person. But then I can learn a ton from them about their experiences and what it's like to be in that community and what have you. So you're really crossing lots of different groups of people and connecting them in a way that is real powerful.
So what are some of the outcomes that your clients typically see? Is it better sort of retention of staff? Is it the ability to attract talent? Is it all of those things and more? What are some of the outcomes that your influence is creating?
Right. And you hit on it. It's all of those things and more. I think the headline would be retention. How do I? Because if you can retain your best employees, I think that's something that's really clearly sort of stands out as ROI for leaders. But what we think about first and foremost is, again, I go back to that 75% of employees and workers who say they're disengaged. And if you think about the ROI for a company on being able to influence 75% of your people doing better work, because you cannot argue to me that someone who's disengaged is doing their best work. I don't think you're going to win that argument. They're not. So being able to influence them to all do better work, hit your bottom line, hit your top line. This is not, I always argue with people, this is not a soft issue. This is not a nice to have. This is not a let's do this because it's the right thing to do. It's like diversity. Diversity is not just because it's the right thing to do. It's because the science shows that diverse teams are more effective. They're more innovative. They actually succeed more. It's the same thing with developing your employees, mentoring your employees, and getting them engaged. You're just going to do better as a company. The ROI is so clear.
So why are they so disengaged? Is it because there's no sort of career development plans in place? Is it because of the spreadsheet warriors running around, trying to figure out what they don't know? Like, what do you find being like one of the most common reasons why, staff are disengaged companies?
Yeah, I think it's because it has not been a priority. It's not been important. I think we're in the midst of a transformation that I think is super healthy, where we're actually even just having this conversation, Matt, talking about it, the importance of this. You go back, it's not that far, you go back in years and it wouldn't even be a serious conversation that we would have about employees. So I think that we're in an area where we're getting more and more focus there, which is important. But you still have the leftover legacy of people and leaders who think, hey, if you're a good manager, you should be mentoring people. So just do that, and not realizing that there's a lot behind it and how that's done effectively, as we've talked about. I also think that the pandemic had a big impact, and we're moving to this environment where people are remote in so many industries and so many businesses, so many organizations, and it's real easy to get disconnected. Things are different. Some of that sort of mentorship by accident that used to happen at the water cooler, right? And what have you. I love that. I got some of my greatest things as a mentee, as a working up the chain of, you get that, the SVP is at the water cooler and you ask them a couple of key questions and you latch onto their words. I could probably, spew out some quotes from way back then. That doesn't happen as much anymore. And so we have to be more deliberate, more intentional about setting up those relationships and making sure that that's happening. I think ultimately, I always tell leaders that it starts with caring. You got to care. You got to believe that. You got to understand. Back to the purpose statement about organizations not reaching their full potential if their people don't. You got to kind of believe that. And if you don't believe that, and if you don't care about getting the most out of your employees, you're not going to focus on something like this. And I think that's still something we're in a transformation. It's getting headlines, but we're not there as across the board.
Understood. So let's talk about influence. What does it mean to you? I mean, as a CEO who's really, I would suggest, making a very positive contribution to humanity through the workplace. What does influence mean to you?
Yeah, such a big question. I think to your point, Matt, one of the things that drew me to Cronis was the ability to influence in the world. For lack of a better term, it's such a global statement. But I think this isn't just about companies. This is about organizations. It's any groups of people. What we're talking about applies. So the ability to influence that in some way, and that's other companies who are trying to apply the same tools to help companies do this. The importance is the movement. The importance is the realization that, as an old colleague of mine many years ago called it, the multipliers. That leaders multiply themselves. Leaders are out there knowing that their job is not to be the expert, but to create lots of experts, to put people in a position to do their best work. So if we can influence the industry and through our customers and through the people we work with, that's huge. But I don't want to miss the influence that we have every day with the interactions that we partake of, that we get engaged in. I'll give you an example, Matt. When the pandemic hit, everybody had to decide, okay, how are we going to handle this? We're all at home. Like now we're all on video and we can't see each other. What are you going to spend your time doing? And I told my leaders, half of leadership is showing up. And if you can't show up, you got to figure out a way to show up. So some of us were doing 15, 16, 18 video meetings a day. And yes, that's hard, but it was part of showing up, being there. And that influence that you then have over people in their time of various different stages of struggling with what we were going through is key. And that's partly how you show you care authentically in what you're doing. I think that there's so many ways to positively influence others in how you show up every day, every time you interact.
Yeah. Love that, man. It's all good. I spoke to Lev Bavin. He wrote the book Extreme Ownership with Jocko Willink. And he was talking about, in fact, I asked him, like as a Navy SEAL, when you get deployed in Afghanistan, like, do you have a plan? Like, do you just tell everybody on the ground what's going to happen now because you're a Navy SEAL?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, dude, like what we do is we actually go to the CEO and we like say, yo, what's number one for you? And he'll go, well, there's some insurgents up on that hill and we need you to go take them out. And then they would go off and then they would go and take them out. And they'd come back to the CEO and go, okay, what do you need help with next? And the point being is that, for leadership, like you were saying, it is showing up, but it's also about, you said it earlier, but care, and then providing a service to others, not them providing a service to you. And I think that's really what's interesting for me around Cronis, right? You're actually enabling service provision in the context of mentorship so that businesses can retain their people and so on. But it is this idea of service.
Yes, service leadership. Yeah. And what I try to always remind people of too is that human beings have an incredible ability to sniff out authenticity. If you're faking the fact that you care, people sniff that out real quickly. So I tell people all the time, don't become a leader if you don't care about people. I'm sure there's lots of people who can be successful that way, but certainly it's not the way I mentor folks. I think and I don't see how you do that effectively, because I think human beings innately, get when someone actually cares about them authentically or not. So when people ask me, okay, what's the first thing you do? Well, care, like authentically care. I care about my people. I'm joking. I've jokingly said, I think this is from a movie I saw a long time ago, but I've jokingly said, when it comes to my people, there's God and then there's me. And the point being just that I just care. I care a lot about the people on the team who signed up for the mission that we're on to go accomplish. And the mission that we're on is big in terms of what we're trying to influence. We just had a demonstration earlier today from our product team of something that they had done really quickly. We'd set them off to do this like a month and a half ago, and they just incredible how quickly that they had gotten it done. And they didn't do that because I told them to. They did that because they believe. They believe in what we're doing. They believe in the mission. They believe in what we're working on together as a team.
Mm. So, David, you've got a great story, right? So how do you approach things like thought leadership and content and all this kind of stuff to get that story, your story, in front of the right people so that you can get attention, recognizing for a moment that attention is really the new oil, right? That we're in terms of the digital age. So how do you approach that whole thing? How do you get your story, this mission, this powerful idea out into the marketplace through content, thought leadership, things like that?
Yeah. Probably not as good, not as well as I'd like to. I try to participate, especially on things like LinkedIn, just because they make it really easy to participate and post. I fortunately have some great people on my team that help with that process, because I do like to jump in myself. I believe so passionately about this that I will just quickly start writing or resharing or what have you, what's going on. We are also going we also do our own communicating in terms of webinars and those kinds of things that we do. But it's something we want to do a lot more of in terms of communicating effectively. There's things like this, when we get invited to chat with someone like yourself, we're just trying to spread the word any way we can, and that'll increase as we grow.
Mm. So, talk to me about podcasts. Have you obviously you have a story you want to share, and having a show like the Matt Brown Show is a very powerful platform for me personally. How do you approach things like podcasts as an example?
Yeah. Well, we've got a team that is focused on what are the right ones to do and what are the right ones for us to do and what are the ones that we should be participating in. I will tell you that it is a whole process of discerning which ones are the right ones to spend our short resources on. So we've got a team that helps figure out where are the right places to be and what to participate with. But and again, I've as I've only been at Cronis for not a very long period of time yet, I'm really focusing on, as we get into 24, how do we now shape that message more effectively? What are the right platforms? Maybe you can share with me some expertise.
You flatter me, David. You flatter me. But I want to change gears and just quickly talk to you about mentorship for you. I mean, who's been, your own personal mentor? If you think about, obviously you probably have more than one over the years, but who's been most influential for you? And I'd love for you to share why.
Fortunately, I think when you lift up every stone, when you lift up every career, I think you probably find a lot of really important mentorship relationships, and mine is no different. From early days, I remember in my very early days, when I came out of college, I tried a couple things, like often people do. I was in finance for a couple of years. I was in HR for a little bit, and that's how I got into tech. Was actually at HR at Oracle, and I actually went to sales because we were already on child number 2. We're living in the Bay Area. It's expensive. I needed to make more money. And here are these salespeople that I could see from my HR role, were making really good money. So I went over and I took a job, got a job, worked on, interviewed, got that job, went in, and I started doing this sales job, which I'd never done anything like it before. I'm in sales. I'm in technology. I'm not a technologist. I'm not a salesperson. I'm trying it for the first time. Long story short, I after 2 months, I thought I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna fail here. This is a long time ago, early in my career, really getting kicked off. And I went to my manager And I said, she was a gal at Oracle managing the inside sales team, and said to her, I said, Shari, I was like, I'm not good at this. I think I made a mistake coming over here. I think I should go back to HR because I was good at that. Like I was good. And she said to me, she said, David, I hear you, but you're doing all the right things. That's my job, is to be able to look at you and say, hey, you're doing all the right things here. So let's make a deal. You just keep doing what you're doing. And if from 3 months from now you feel the same way, I will help you do anything you need to do, anything you want to do. I'll help you move back to the country if that's what you want to do. That is one of the most important conversations professionally I've ever had, because I stuck with it. And a month later, I made my number, and I made my number every quarter for 2.5 years, which is a big deal in sales. And that was the foundation of my career moving forward as a salesperson. And I can go on and on here. I had people, a gentleman named Jay Tyler joined a company that I was in the late 90s at Clarify, and really inspired me in terms of servant leadership. He was the first one who kind of talked about it that way, and talked about selflessness, talked about, when you're doing recognition, which we do a lot in sales, when your people are being recognized, that's the best feedback you can ever have. That's the best reward you can ever have, is when your people are getting recognized. It's those kinds of things that made a big difference. And I get, I've had lots of those. And then as my career has gone forward, flash forward, I've been more on the mentor side, and some of the mentees have been incredibly influential. I during a few years ago, I started mentoring 2 different women in the Black community. I was very fortunate to have the honor of being the executive sponsor of the Black at UT ERG group at Clarify. And Matt, the amount that I learned from these 2 women is just changed my life. They were candid, they were direct. I like to think I helped them in their careers, but my goodness, did they help me in terms of understanding a group of people, a gender and an ethnic group that I had no concept, no life knowledge of at all. So I've really benefited from this, from the mentor side, from the mentee side, throughout my career.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. My mentor he owns like hundreds of businesses, so he's super wealthy in that. And he told me a story one time. When he was young, his first business, because the reason I'm telling this story, because I actually think mentorship plays out more when you're young than when you're old. It plays along, all the way up as you get older, of course. But it's from an impact perspective, it's really in the youth and the younger side of things when you're first starting out.
Yeah, it's huge.
And so basically, he started this business called the New York Sausage Factory or something like that. And everyone told him, "Listen, brother, it's not going to work." And he was like, "No, it will work." And so then he raised some money from this investor, who's even more wealthy than he is. I think he owns today more property in Amsterdam than anybody else.
Oh, wow.
Just to give you a sense of mentorship skills. So basically, this business died. And so he had to obviously go to his mentor, which gave him the money to do this business. And he said to him, no matter what it takes, I'll pay you back every cent, no matter what it takes. And then he got up to leave the table, and his mentor slammed his fist down on the table, and he said to him, "Sit down." And so he sat down, and he said to him, "Did I back you or did I back the business?" And he said, "You back me." He said, "Yes." And he said, "If you walk out that door, then you will have failed. But this is a normal part of the journey, and I back you to succeed, no matter what it is." And if you think about how powerful that is, right? When you first lose your business, when your first business, like I've lost one when I was young. I sold my first one when I was 26, and then the next one died. And let me tell you how that fucked me up there. And I didn't have that guy. I didn't have what my mentor had at the time to say, "Listen, it's okay. Like businesses die, or dude, like what you're going through and what you're suffering is normal, right? I know it doesn't feel normal to you, but it's your first time. Just continue with it. Don't worry about it. Just persevere, because when you persevere, success can happen at any moment." But I didn't have that. And when I think about mentorship, and if I just had that one person to say, brother, listen,
Yeah.
it's okay, bro, carry on. I think I would have built more successful, bigger businesses, and I think I would have ultimately made a better contribution to society. If I just had that one person to give me perspective,
It's
because
incredibly powerful.
dude, I feel like we in so many cases we are stuck inside the bottle of our own businesses. We can't read the label oftentimes. And so that's really
Yes.
what a mentor is for me. It's like someone that goes, listen, brother, this is what it says on your label. This is what is really
Yeah.
going on. It's like a perspective shift that can get you to make a new choice or inspire an action or maybe shift a perception. And this is why influence for me is so important, because people seem to think, oh, no, it's influencer marketing, but it isn't. Influencer marketing sucks. But when it comes to business leadership, like influence doesn't need to happen, in terms of a million followers. It can happen with one conversation,
Absolutely.
like I described. It's this idea of, the one download that counts, not the million. Because if you have a million downloads and, 999,999 don't care about what you've said, what
Yeah.
does it matter if the one person, the one view, the one download decided to do something with that information? And I
Yeah.
think that's really that idea of perspective, when it comes to influence.
It resonates with me completely. I could literally, as you're talking, Matt, I can go back and think about the times in my life when I failed. We all fail. Some people want to try to hide the fact that they fail, but like we all fail in our lives. In fact, anybody who tells me they never failed, I don't want to hire them because it concerns me. Because how do what character building happens around how you fail? But the other thing is that very often it's those mentors, those influencers have the biggest impact on your life when you're down, when things aren't going your way. Just kind of like the story I told you, and I have multiples of those in my career, and it just changed the course of not just what I did and how I succeeded, but also who I am.
Mm. So what would you say, David, is not understood? Like if you think about the impact that you're having as a team and as a business with other business leaders, what do you think is misunderstood about this idea of influence when it comes to business leadership?
Well, in the context of mentorship, I think what's still too often not understood is the dramatic impact of this concept of employee development and employee engagement. It's still not well enough understood how big an impact it's having on your business. So, when leadership and the influence that they can have, obviously you're using that influence one way or another, but the power to drive your results as an organization, whatever those are, based on the simple thing of being focused on the development of your people. I just don't think that's well enough understood yet. I think we live in a world now where it's ripe for people getting it, understanding it, receiving it, but I still think that the vast majority don't yet. So that's what we need to crack.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. David, let's wrap this up, dude. If you were to share one secret of influence to our audience around the world, what would that secret of influence be?
In many ways, your life will be measured by how many people you were able to touch in a positive way. And so as you conduct your day, and I think you mentioned it earlier, just the individual ways that you can impact people. And yes, when you can do it in a really scalable way, that's great. But don't forget about the small ways that you impact people's life every day. And sometimes it's going into an elevator with someone who's in your company, and instead of looking at your phone, turning to them and introducing yourself and shaking their hand and looking them in the eye and being present and authentic can change. I still remember when I at Oracle, when Larry Ellison did that with me, and to this day I remember that moment. Everything you do with people has an impact on people, and I always tell people, like, my cultural philosophy around organizations in terms of traits is high performance and high teammate. And when I define high teammate, it's, are you a positive net influence on the people around you or a negative net influence on the people around you? And if you're a negative net influence, I don't want you on my team. Because I'm looking for people who are a positive influence on those around them. And you can do it in lots of different ways. But that to me is the most important influence that any of us have. So are you able to positively influence others today? And if you can say that at the end of every day, you're living a good life.
I should have included that idea in my book, positive versus negative net influence, but it is an ethical thing. I think
Yes.
you have especially in leadership, you have people who wield influence in a negative way, and that builds a particular type of culture. And then you have other types of leaders that wield their influence in a positive way, where they're not a dictator, they're a service provider, or they adopt the servant leadership idea, and they invest in their team and blah, 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 and it is an ethical thing, but I think ultimately it's a choice, and oftentimes I don't find that leaders make that choice often enough. Well, look, David, thanks so much for coming on the show, brother. Appreciate you. And it's so awesome to hear your story about the meaningful work and impact that you're having. I think it's a very, very interesting space.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Matt.
Where everyone's running around trying to promise revenue growth and all this kind of stuff. And actually the real thing is people, or the more valuable thing is people. So only wishing you and the team the very best.
Thank you very much, Matt. No, it's been great. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, anytime. And everybody else, don't forget, you can pick up Secrets of Influence on Amazon. And so we'll see you all again soon. Ciao for now.